What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. We're continuing our coverage of Call of Duty Champs with a preview for each team. We're talking a little bit about Boston Breach, kind of a surprise top 8 team, how they got here, how they're playing right now, what they need to do to go ahead and win the championship later this week. Let's dive in. So as you guys see here, Boston's coming to this event as the number 6 seed. I think that's kind of a surprise. I mean, think about it. Boston was a team that didn't exist before the season started. Franchise didn't even exist before the season started, and they outplaced a bunch of teams that have been around since the first season of CDL. And it's been an interesting journey, right? So the season started off, there was the rumor of the Washington Justice organization getting into Call of Duty. We heard about this Methods team with TJ, with Paul X, with Venom. And obviously with the Washington Justice thing falling through, there were a lot of questions, right? What's going to happen with Huntsman's spot now that all those players are over and merged with the Dallas Empire and they formed OpTic Texas? And then it became clear, as we got towards the end of 2021, it looked like the organization that was involved with the Boston Overwatch League spot, the Kraft family, was starting to get involved with Call of Duty. Shortly after, kind of got rumored that the Boston Breach is going to be an entity with the Oxygen esports folks getting in bed with the Kraft group. And then sort of the same kind of thing, right? That sort of same team sort of started to circle the Methods TJ, but there was a little bit of a twist this time around. We're already kind of a little bit into the season. We had a few Challengers Cups, and it seemed like the team was going to be Methods, TJ, Nero, and Capsule. So a little bit of an interesting squad with Zed and Dens leading the line from the coaching end. You're mixing two young guys in Nero and Cap, and TJ and Methods that have been around for a while. We get to the Major 1 qualifier, and Boston does pretty good, 2-3. They end up kind of benefiting from some tiebreaker shenanigans. They lose to a strong FaZe team, lose to a strong OpTic team. Kind of a tough Game 5 loss against New York, but they do a good job against LAG and Paris, and they're able to get themselves in a winner's bracket for the first major of the season. And at that major, they actually do pretty well. They have a tough loss to FaZe at the initial outset of the tournament, but they do a good job against Florida. Paris, they end up actually losing to Toronto, but overall, a pretty good showing for Boston, keeping pace with the pack of teams and looking like they might be a serviceable squad for the rest of the season. Major 2 rolls around the qualifiers, and Boston actually gets out to a really hard start, 4-1. Their only losses to a London team that also went 4-1. Again, at this point, like, we'd already seen this Boston team being really dangerous on Berlin, really dangerous on Tuscan. At that point, Capsule was probably considered like the best player on the team. Play style's a little bit funky on the squad, and we'll get to that later, but really good showing online from them at the beginning of the Major 2 cycle. And this is sort of their best showing of the season at the event in Minnesota. They get their business done against eventual tournament winners LAG. They beat Florida in Game 5, and they don't really have FaZe's number most of the season. They go down 0-3, and they end up actually losing to LAG in losers finals in a tough Game 5. But ultimately, top 3 for Boston, great. Continued improvement from a very young team. And they do great at Pro-Am again. Look, they're in sort of a kind of, if you look at it retrospectively, they were in Group D in Pro-Am, which wasn't a strong group. Kind of even if you consider Toronto NA to be, Academy NA to be a good team. Boston end up kind of getting that crazy sort of 2-1 tiebreaker, but they do end up actually losing in the first round of the bracket to eventual finalist LAT. So again, not, you probably want it better than top 8, but it's not a bad showing again from the Boston Breach. But then we get to sort of the bumpiest part of the season for them. You get the sort of break after Pro-Am. They come back and they have a little bit of a stinker in Major 3. They go 1-4, real tough losses to FaZe once again, Florida, LA Thieves, and New York, who are starting to play really good. They did get a victory against the London team that was struggling, but starting to see signs of, for this Boston team, maybe all was sort of not right with the camp. And they pull up to Major 3 and they play one series and they're out of there, losing to another bubble team in Minnesota, 3-0. And I think at that point, it was sort of end of the line for that version of the Boston squad. We'll talk a little bit more about like game modes and maps in a minute, but the depth of their winning kind of conditions were not there, so they end up making a swap. Going into the Major 4 qualifiers, they end up being a benefit of sort of the situation in Florida with Reese Vivid and Major Maniac and this and that, and they end up actually having Vivid sort of fall into their lap. And so with Vivid coming over from Boston, they end up actually dropping Capsule, which at the beginning of the season you would have been like, well, seems like a little bit surprised. Cap's playing pretty good. But if you talk to folks around the camp, they said at this point, Capsule was sort of playing a little bit too slow. The pacing was super off. Nero was like super fast on the team, and you had a little bit of a situation. We actually saw Reese Vivid at LAG, where it's like you got one player playing super fast, 3 players playing super slow. You're just not going to win consistently that way. And the Reese Vivid thing actually works out for them. Look, at this point, they're sort of in the mix to potentially not make it to champs. And they go 4-1 and actually get some decent ground against them and some of the other bubble teams. And they play really, really good online. Once again, their only losses to eventual major winner LA Thieves in a 3-0 fashion, but that's sort of a weird, if you believe in sort of the online stuff, that's sort of a weird matchup of Boston Thieves and being somewhere in the middle of the country. And they have good wins against LAG, OpTic Texas, Seattle, and Toronto. So good set. And ultimately, they pull up to Major 4, and it's kind of a mixed bag, actually. They lose to a tough Florida team again in Game 5, sort of a recurring theme. They have a Game 5 banger against Seattle, and they go ahead and actually win that this time, but they run into a streaking Texas team, and they're not able to get it done in 4 maps. Getting top 8, not the worst result, but at this point, they locked in the champ spot. They were good to go and had some momentum going to the final event of the season. Shout out breaking point for this image. Like we kind of finished this sort of season recap. 6th seed, but like we've discussed in a lot of these previous videos, Boston kind of ending up being sort of a 500 team. And I think amongst sort of the 500 teams, they've been 500 in pretty much all game modes across the boat. Probably weakest for them is control, and we'll get to that a little bit more. They haven't been a bad hardpoint squad. They haven't been a bad S&D squad, you know, compared to sort of the mid-pack teams. I think that's why they were able to sort of parlay some really good placings early on this season, sort of hold their spot for champs. So I want to talk a little bit about what Boston needs to work on as we get towards champs, and you know, we're sort of at the end of the practice cycle when this video comes out, but hopefully they've worked on some of these things. So taking a look at these KDs, and shout out Easy Mac for the sheet as always. Keep in mind that these are overalls for all these players throughout the season, so Reese Vivid stats include his time on Florida. The thing that stands out to me is the ARs have played well on this team, which we've seen in a lot of squads from an overall standpoint. Where I think Boston's going to need to improve if they want to not get like top 8, top 6 and make it to the weekend at champs is Nero and TJ are going to need to have like probably the best event of the season for both. They've been serviceable, but while you're able to qualify with champs at 0.94s, it's going to be really tough when you're playing the likes of Thieves and FaZe, even more experienced teams like Toronto who are able to come sometimes low slaying games because they're really consistent. That inconsistency has been a problem for Boston all season as they've been sort of like in that pack of mid-pack teams. And if we want to take that like even further, I think my second kind of biggest point with them about their sort of current standing is they haven't not played good against what we consider like the top 3 teams in the game right now. They haven't won a single map against Thieves all season. And we even talk like they haven't beaten New York. That's another team that's playing well right now. They have had Seattle's number all season, which is interesting. I think we'll get to that in terms of or maybe the hardpoint stuff. But FaZe has been a boogeyman for them all season. They only have 1 map win in 13 maps against FaZe, and that was an S&D on Berlin. Every other map and every other series against FaZe hasn't been close. So my like overall thought process here for Boston is like you're gonna need to get it done against some top teams if you want to win this event. And right now you're successful far against Thieves. It's OpTic and FaZe. Like you have 1 series win to show it in like 10 tries, and it's not gonna be good enough to get top 4 at champs. So let's take a look at the overall map pool. They play a lot of maps, which is good. They start off the season being like that Berlin team, and they've carried that. They've been solid all season, but they've had a lot of success on Tuscan. They've had a lot of success on Bocage, especially Hardpoint. They do play a bit of Gav, but I wouldn't say that they're like an amazingly strong Gav team against like a Thieves or an OpTic or a FaZe. So I would want them to play more Berlin, Bocage's Tuscans against those teams. And you kind of see it in sort of the recent results of Reese Vivid, right? So they've been really good in Berlin, really good in Bocage. They're actually like really hot in Hardpoint right now. They actually haven't played Tuscan a lot with Reese Vivid, which is really tricky. And that's what's playing into sort of the Gavitude thing. It's like if you're not going to be good at Tuscan, right? Like FaZe and OpTic, and we've talked about this in like all the previous videos, they're getting Berlin out of there, not playing Berlin hardpoint against you guys. They're going to square up with you guys against Bocage. They'll square up on Tuscan if you guys think you've improved on it, and they'll be happy to play Gavitude. So I don't really think that Boston's going to have a lot of success at this event if they don't improve their Tuscan hardpoint to get off of playing a lot of Gav in series. S&D's been okay with the Reese Vivid. They've had some mixed results. It looks like taking a look at their recent form that they've been solid on Tuscan S&D. They're pretty straight up S&D map, and they've been good at Berlin S&D, but Bocage and Desert Siege have been a little bit of a struggle for them. And the control results have been good through Major Force. So you like kind of where the respawns are at in total. So let's talk a little bit about their bracket matchup, break that down, give a prediction, kind of give my overall thoughts of where I think they're going to place at this event. So they're going to square up against the Los Angeles Thieves, your Major 4 winners in the middle of the day on the first day on Thursday. It's sort of an interesting matchup. You got to kind of like think about maps and sort of how these teams have played previously. It's only gone 6 maps. It's been hot 3-0s. Gavitude has been played in those series, and we know how good Thieves is on Gavitude. I would say if you're Boston, you need to figure out how to not play Gavitude. And you kind of see the difficulty for Boston from a veto perspective, right? If they're not strong on Tuscan right now, we know that Thieves don't play Bocage. It's going to be Gavitude Berlin. We know that Thieves are the higher seed, so they're going to be able to choose that first map. So we're getting Gav hardpoint in again, and Boston's got to figure out a way to win that. Or if you're Boston and you've gotten better at Tuscan, you can get Gav out of there. Suddenly it's a little bit of a mixier situation, right, for Thieves. And again, with S&Ds, we've only seen Berlin S&D. I see that as a little bit mixy, but Thieves are actually pretty good at that map now. They've improved a lot in their S&D in the last 6 to 8 weeks. And controls will be a mix, but I see this as 50-50. Again, if I'm Boston, maybe stay away from Gav control. I don't mind a Berlin or a Tuscan if you can, again, figure out how to be better at Tuscan. So if I have to give a prediction on this series, honestly, I don't think it's going to go 3 games. I really want to spot Boston at least 1. They've played this matchup twice now. They've learned a few things. It's sort of the first match of the tournament for Thieves. Thieves, you know, maybe a little bit of emotion coming in because you're playing in from an LA crowd defending, you know, winning the last championship. I got Boston forcing a map 4, but I think Thieves are just going to be too strong and respawn in these in this matchup. And look, I think my kind of like final thesis on what I think about Boston at this event is I think that it is a surprise and it should be celebrated. They were able to actually qualify for this event. It's a huge achievement. Coming with a clean slate, no coach, no staff, no players. They able to pick up a team sort of last minute before the end of the year and get it going before Kickoff Classic. And they were able to outplace a bunch of teams. Getting this event is an accomplishment. I see this squad as sort of very much a work in progress, probably seeing the fruits of their labor more next season. And I really don't see kind of how they might get anything higher than top 8 here, because if they lose to Thieves, they're going to have to play the loser of Texas and Toronto. And if it's Texas, I mean, I just don't see it for Boston. They have probably a better chance against Toronto, who really aren't an amazingly strong respawn team. But Toronto, like, problem this year has been really just sort of getting those clutch gunfights at the end of maps to win them. I feel like experience is going to more benefit that Toronto team. So my guess is sort of probably a top 8 thing for Boston. If they can win one of those series, though, like, I think the flip side of that is they're playing probably like a FaZe or a New York in the next round, and I don't really see anything higher than top 6 for this Boston team. And that'll do it for this video, guys. Again, I mean, so great season for Boston. You know, if they surprise everybody and they get top 4 at this event, like we've seen it. I didn't see London, for example, getting top 4 at the first year of champs, so you know, anything could happen in a given week. But a lot to like if you're this Boston team heading into their first real offseason as a team. Let me know what you guys think in the video. Do you agree with my statement? Do you think Boston's going to play a little bit better? Do you think I'm kind of underselling them? Do you kind of agree with me they're going to be kind of top 8, top 6? Let me know in the comments. If you like my content, please subscribe, guys. We'll be putting out videos all week as we get ready for champs. We'll get some quick reactions after each day of champs, and we'll get into the off-season with content after we lift that trophy at the end of the week. As always, appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.